expectations. The number of people that we got from our domestic market was far greater than what we expected. So it was quite successful. We did quite a few different things. We did email marketing. We did a lot of social media marketing in the way of Facebook and Instagram, Twitter. So we covered as many bases as we could. And we have an emailing list of something like in excess of 2,000 people in Papua New Guinea that also receive emails regularly. And we marketed domestically and it worked. The domestic market could become our main market, and no doubt our international market is going to come back, and the international market is going to be the cream on the top for our domestic market. I can almost see that taking place in the future. During the COVID, we actually had a local company approach us and ask us to put in some beehives, and we thought it was a good idea. Like, there's a shortage of bees in this country, and to help pollinate not only the plant but other produce like pumpkins, pawpaws. You really need the bees to pollinate plants like that. I guess our top priority for the use of the honey is in Rodden Ridge itself. We actually use it as part of our food. Long-term wise, hopefully we can get some honey that we can actually sell. It was very difficult to suddenly experience zero revenue and then try and build the business up again. It's been challenging times, but we're still around, and we're likely to be in another 40 years too.
My name is Casimiro Tukinikoro. People call me Kasi. The company Rivers Fiji, it's affiliated to Duavata Sustainable Collective. Duavata Sustainable Collective is a group of tourism operators, and they all have same thing in mind: to protect, preserve the environment, and be a voice for the communities. We not only promote the protection and the conservation of the environment, we also want to promote and help people understand about our custom and tradition. The Apanawa conservation area plays an important, vital role to the business. There's a lot of logging around the Serua. This is one of the biggest forest plantation of mahogany, and we knew they were going to cutting down. So we had to save the river corridor, and that's why we had to act fast and protect it. When COVID happened, it really struck us to the gut, and I had to quickly think off my feet what to do. I guess the hardest moment was sending people home, seeing that everyone struggle and you can't do anything about it. I guess the opportunity presented itself when government relaxed a little bit in July. Then I said, man, we need to tackle the local market. Even our local price was still high, so we had to bring it down, significantly. We had to reduce it like to 75%. 75%. So that's what we did. Boom, it exploded. People were just coming. My advice to small operators like us after COVID is we need to do things differently now. Why I'm so passionate about this river, when you go down the river, you'll understand. And you see the formation of the rocks, it tells a story. We have everything to lose. We have to protect this. This is our golden egg. This is why guests come to Fiji. It is our environment. It is our culture and tradition. It is the Fijian people.
本日はお忙しい中、ツーリズムエキスポジャパン2022基調講演にご参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。今回ツーリズムエキスポ2022基調講演は東京ビッグサイト会議棟でのリアル、YouTube ライブでのオンライン配信のハイブリッド開催にて実施いたします。まずは会場にお越しいただきました皆様への注意事項です。本日会場内は一部指定席とさせていただいております。会場前方のスクリーンにてご確認いただきますようよろしくお願いいたします。お座席の場所がご不明な場合は場内のスタッフにお声掛けください。また新型コロナウイルス感染症予防のため会場内ではマスクをご着用いただきますようよろしくお願いいたします。携帯電話はマナーモードに設定いただくか電源をお切りいただきますようお願いいたします。喫煙はロビーにございます喫煙場所でお願いいたします。ご理解ご協力のほどよろしくお願いいたします。また本日は同時通訳をご用意しております。基調講演は日本語、大臣会合は英語でのスピーチとなります。ご希望の方は会場入り口にてお配りいたしました同時通訳レシーバーをご利用ください。なお、お帰りの際は同時通訳レシーバーを会場出口のスタッフにお渡しください。続いて
This is an announcement for those who are joining us online. We are live streaming the lectures today, so depending on the condition of the communication lines, the sound and the video may be unstable. If you cannot see the live streaming, please check your connection settings and access again. We will start shortly. Please wait a few more moments until we begin. Thank you.
皆様。
Greetings to you all. Thank you for joining us for the Tourism Expo Japan 2022 keynote speech, despite your busy schedules. I have the honor of serving as MC today. My name is Rumi Ayukawa. I thank you for your cooperation in advance. This year, the theme of the forum is tackling climate change, coexisting with COVID in the post-pandemic world, solutions for the new tourism industry. Now we'd like to have the keynote speech. Our challenge for the future wonderful sky is the title of the speech. We have Mr. Shinichi Inoue, chairman of the Scheduled Airlines Association of Japan. He's also president and CEO of All Nippon Airways. Mr. Inoue, please.
My name is Shinichi Inoue. I'm the chairman of the Scheduled Airline Association of Japan, and also president and CEO of ANA, All Nippon Airways. Please allow me to speak in Japanese. Okay?
Allow me to start by explaining the outline of the Scheduled Airlines Association of Japan. The purpose of the Scheduled Airlines Association of Japan is to promote the sound development of the air transport business in Japan through research and study of the air transport business. The members are 19 airlines based in Japan. Not only so-called full-service carriers such as ANA and JAL, but also LCCs such as Peach and Zip Air and NCA for air cargo are working together. Although we are competitors in the market, we cooperate with each other to solve various issues for the development of the airline industry. Today, I'd like to talk about the challenges of the sustainable airline industry, which is exactly what we are working on. Before getting into the body of my presentation, I'd like to speak about what we have seen in the country measures for the climate measures. The COP is the kind of conference of parties for the country measures for the climate change. And the first meeting was held in 1992 in Germany, and every year we have this COP meeting, and this year we will have the COP27 in November this year in Egypt. At this point, the 197 countries are the members, and after the Paris Agreement, many of the companies are working toward that. And a Kyoto Protocol have been made, and also Paris Agreement was agreed upon in 2020. And this is not only for the promotion of the measures against the global warming, but also there are many measures taken for the prevention of elevation of sea levels. In 2020, the Prime Minister Suga declared the zero carbon policy by the year 2050, which is a long-term goal for the Japanese government. So for the domestic flights, this should be in line with the Paris Agreement. For the international aviation, it is difficult to sort out to which nation the CO2 generated by transportation belongs, since customers and cargo are transported between various countries and regions. Therefore, the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO, a specialized agency of the United Nations, has established common goals and schemes. For international flights, we follow the COSIA CO2 reduction and offset scheme established by ICAO. That is the scheme for the CO2 reduction and offsetting. For domestic flights, we follow the laws and government policies of each country. Against the total emission of CO2, the percentage of the emission by the aviation industry is 2%. However, we are tackling with this not only because we have to be in compliance with these rules, but also we wish to raise the level of sustainability of the human beings as a whole on this planet. The value of airline passengers are changing, and they are demanding sustainable transport in air cargo and travel. Sustainability is also essential for airlines themselves to connect the world and leave the value created through the transportation of people and goods to the next generation. On the other hand, decarbonizing air transportation is a big challenge for us because it is technically very difficult. The International Air Transport Association, IATA, has 2 points of view for net zero 2050. One is a combination of several approaches: the use of sustainable aviation fuels or SAF, new technologies, operational innovations, carbon offsets, and CO2 removal technology called carbon capture. Some of the technologies are challenging and require more innovation, but we know what we need to do. This has been already streamlined. Another is unity. This is not just an issue for airlines or aviation industry, but for all industries, for public-private partnerships, including government support, for fuel producers, for investors, and for all of you to work together. Then as to the very nature of SAF. What is SAF to start with? SAF is the technology that will play the most significant role in achieving net zero 2050. Today, I'd like to familiarize you with SAF. The aviation industry has traditionally relied on petroleum-derived jet fuel, or kerosene, but technological advances have made it possible to produce new fuels from non-petroleum feedstocks that are equivalent to conventional jet fuel. SAF was once called biofuel, but now it can be produced from non-bio exhaust gases and municipal waste, all of which are collectively referred to as SAF. The reason why SAF is so valuable is that, as it is called drop-in fuel, it allows the use of existing aircraft engines, refueling facilities, and other infrastructures. There is also research into changing energy sources such as hydrogen and electric aircraft, but it is difficult to achieve large aircraft or long-distance flight on hydrogen or electricity. This new technology will contribute to the realization of CO2 net zero while continuing to use the current internal combustion engines. Now, as to how the SAF would be able to reduce CO2 emission, please refer to the slide. In fact, even when SAF is used, the engine still emits CO2, just as it does when conventional fuel is used. So, in order for you to understand how SAF reduces CO2, we need you to look at its life cycle. As shown on the left side of the screen, jet fuel, or the fossil fuel, is a one-way system that releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere after it is extracted from the ground. However, By replacing it with SAF, as shown on the right side of the screen, it becomes a carbon recycling mechanism that utilizes the carbon that exists on the ground. So, in this way, SAF is a sustainable aviation fuel because it does not increase CO2 emissions into the atmosphere over its entire life cycle. So, I have shown you how SAF does not increase CO2 emissions over its entire life cycle, but I'd also like to add that it does not necessarily reduce CO2 emission by 100%. Compared to conventional jet fuel, SAF contributes up to 90% CO2 reduction, but that means that 10% of CO2 remains. CO2 emitted during the manufacturing process of SAF and during the transportation of raw materials and products will remain. Therefore, as mentioned at the beginning of this article, of this presentation, it is necessary to combine several methods to reduce CO2 emissions. We aim to achieve net zero through the use of carbon offsets and the latest technology called direct air capture, or DAC, which captures CO2 directly from the atmosphere. Next, I'd like to share with you some of our efforts to promote SAF in Japan. Please refer to the left picture. Japan Airlines, JAL, invested in Fulcrum Bioenergy, an American SAF manufacturing company, in 2018. Please refer to the right photo, which was taken in 2019. ANA established a supply chain to import SAF from Neste in Finland, and became the first airline in Asia to start using it on scheduled flights departing from Haneda and Narita airports. Unfortunately, as some of you may have noticed, SAF made in Japan has not yet been commercialized. Although there have been some successful demonstrations through NIDO projects, mass production and price reduction of domestically produced SAF is a major challenge for the aviation industry in the future. So if it is possible to be produced this way, and then this could be used for the other internal engines. So in thinking about the overall picture, I think it makes sense to drive further into this direction.
So next, I'd like to talk about the SAF journey by Japan's airlines. The Japanese government is also conducting several demonstration projects of manufacturing technologies in an effort to take advantage of Japan's technological capabilities to lead innovation in SAF. Here you see Toshiba, Toyo Engineering, Idemitsu Kosan, JCCS, and ANA jointly working to jointly produce SAF by combining CO2 electrolysis technology, which converts CO2 into carbon monoxide, with FD synthesis technology. So it's a carbon recycling demonstration project by those companies. It's supported by the Ministry of the Environment. As you can see, there are many promising technologies in Japan, and efforts are being made to put them to practical use through public-private partnerships. So I'd like to talk about a collaboration with the national government a little further. So in April 2022, this past April, the Civil Aviation Bureau of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, MLIT, established a specialized organization called the Carbon Neutrality Promotion Office. Also, Public-Private Council for the Production of SAF has been established, which is working to solve a series of issues from raw material procurement, production, and supply chain establishment in Japan. The Public-Private Council includes airlines, fuel manufacturers, MLIT, METI, or Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, and the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, or MAF, and the Ministry of the Environment, MOE. And so an all-Japan structure is being established. So I would like to talk about private sector efforts to enhance the social awareness of SAF. I must say that the social awareness about SAF is still low. So we think that it is important to spread people's understanding of SAF. So you see on the left, my predecessor, ANA President Hirako, and JAL President Akasaka, they published a joint report to raise awareness of SAF and promote its dissemination. The two companies will continue to cooperate in both the production and use of SAF in order to preserve air transportation, which connects Japan and the world and is an important part of our social infrastructure for future generations. Right photo, it says Act for Sky. It's a cross-industrial volunteer group that was launched in March of this year. So this is photo from the inauguration. The group is working to raise awareness of SAF beyond the boundaries of industrial sectors. The act in the Act for Sky means action, and participating companies are taking action to improve their supply chains, including SAF production and raw material procurement. The number of companies participating was 16 at the time of establishment. It's increased to 22 now. So next, talk about cooperation amongst various sectors to promote SAF. So ANA is the first airline in Asia to launch a decarbonization program called the SAF Flight Initiative as a mechanism for cooperation across industries. The SAF Flight Initiative is a program that encourages companies that want to reduce indirect CO2 emissions, the so-called Scope 3 emissions from air cargo transport and employees' business travel, to participate in the program, thereby promoting the use of SAF and contributing to cross-sectoral decarbonization. Similar programs exist in Europe and the US, and in Asia too, a movement is underway to create a virtuous cycle between environmental measures and the economy. Next, I'd like to talk about sustainable cooperation with our customers. As a move to work with travelers on environmental measures, we support various environmental conservation activities through our carbon offset program. So, in addition to decarbonization, we are working to solve various environmental problems in Japan and the world with the cooperation of local people and customers. For example, to conserve limited resources, we have the 4R initiatives such as not using plastic products as much as possible, reducing the amount of plastic products used, and reusing important resources. So the aviation industry is promoting this 4R initiative. And efforts toward zero food loss, which means not only reducing the amount of food waste, but also composting and using vegetables grown with the compost for in-flight meals. Also, we have introduced the upcycling to revive maintenance uniforms and uniforms of other members, which has been very well received by employees and customers. So we're also working to protect the natural environment that we now take for granted and pass it on to the next generation. For example, conservation of rich coral, rare plants and animals, and extermination of invasive alien species, also reforestation and beach cleanup for earthquake recovery, and then preventing illegal trade in wildlife. All employees are working hard to prevent such illegal trades. And also we're expanding our activities into sustainable tourism. So next page. So we want the people to enjoy nature, and so we have a tourism program that contributes to the local community by allowing our customers to experience the great outdoors and also provide sustainable travel values. As the airline industry has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, we're working together with local communities to propose new forms of tourism with a firm grasp of the needs of our customers, with a desire to overcome this hardship together. So we participate in the Ministry of the Environment's National Park Official Partnership Program. Both ANA and JAL have been working together on this program since inception. And in response to the increased demand for nature due to COVID, we are proposing ways to spend your stay in order to further experience the richness of nature and outdoor experiences. So it's been 3 years since COVID started, and the customers' insight has changed. Their demands for travel has changed. So we would like to respond to that and propose new forms of tourism. Finally, collective efforts for future wonderful sky. So we are trying to transform air transportation into a transportation infrastructure that does not increase CO2 emissions by 2050 through technological innovations such as SAF. We're also working to solve various environmental problems with the cooperation of local people and customers. We will continue to work with local communities to provide sustainable travel experiences that allow people to travel comfortably around the world. We're committed to connecting sustainable air transportation and travel experiences to the next generation, transcending boundaries of public and private sectors and the industrial sectors. Please look forward to the future of Japan. So that has been my short presentation. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Inoue. Please step down from the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today for the Tourism Expo Japan 2022 keynote speech. This room is going to be converted for the 5th, the Tourism Ministerial meeting of the Tourism Expo Japan, TEJ. If you are seated at the front of the hall, please leave the room and let a staff member guide you out. Please wait a few moments until we are ready. Please be careful not to forget any of your belongings behind if you are leaving here. Simultaneous interpretation receivers will be collected at the exit of the venue. Please return the simultaneous translation receiver to the person in charge at the exit. If you are watching the webcast, please stay tuned to the webcast channel. The round table meeting of the ministers will start at 1:50. Please wait for the start of the meeting.
What do we seek? You can't define it, can you? The destination or the journey? Do we escape or do we return? And why does soil make us feel we belong? Is color just energy we can see? And is taste just an adventure? Does music create harmony? Or does harmony create music? Time and space. But what is time but now? And what are questions but answers we already know? It's time. Go.
My name is Hiroo Ishii. I'm the owner and manager of Waimana Seaside Lodge, all the way out in the northern topmost side of Savai. I also have other businesses which I own, mostly concentrated around and connected to tourism, and of course our agri-tourism business in terms of cocoa. Pre-COVID, our communities were very involved and connected to the business. Our farmers would provide a lot of vegetables, fruits. A lot of their produce come to us and we use them through our restaurants. The fishing community, we take in quite a bit of their produce as well. Post-COVID, we've seen a lot of losses in job-wise from our own businesses. I think we've lost about 3/4 of our employment. The hardest part is losing people. And a lot of our tourism workers, they're more like family. Myself and my wife, we sat down and we said we needed to do something. It was either we close down our tourism side of, or really look at how we can sort of redirect our resources, and especially our people. And we've really changed the way that we operate to ensure that we can survive what's happening with COVID, but also build ourselves up to be a bit more resilient to when these kind of events happen. During the whole time, during this transitioning, we moved a lot of our workforce around to our other businesses. Not only that, we moved a lot of our workers as well towards the agricultural side of our business with the cocoa, teaching them various skills. Agriculture is part of our life here in Samoa, especially in the rural communities. That's all everybody survives on, is subsistence farming. So bringing those two together and hopefully a stronger industry, not only for tourism, but also for agriculture. Tourism is about loving what you do and knowing that what you're offering to the people who are visiting us is you're offering your culture, your people, yourself. And all we can do, especially at these times of uncertainty and the challenges that we're all facing, is bear with it, persevere, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Sunaka. My name is Casimiro Tukinikoro. People call me Kasi. The company Rivers Fiji, it's affiliated to Duavata Sustainable Collective. Duavata Sustainable Collective is a group of tourism operators, and they all have same thing in mind: to protect, preserve the environment, and be a voice for the communities. We not only promote the protection and the conservation of environment, we also want to promote and help people understand about our custom and tradition. The Apanawa conservation area plays an important, vital role to the business. There's a lot of logging around the Serua. This is one of the biggest forest plantation of mahogany, and we knew they were going to cutting down. So we had to save the river corridor, and that's why we had to act fast and protect it. When COVID happened, it really struck us to the gut, and I had to quickly think off my feet what to do. I guess the hardest moment was sending people home, seeing that everyone struggle and you can't do anything about it. I guess the opportunity presented itself when government relaxed a little bit in July. Then I said, man, we need to tackle the local market. Even our local price was still high, so we had to bring it down, significantly. We had to reduce it like to 75%. 75%. So that's what we did. Boom, it exploded. People were just coming. My advice to small operators like us after COVID is we need to do things differently now. Why I'm so passionate about this river, when you go down the river, you'll understand. And you see the formation of the rocks, it tells a story. We have everything to lose. We have to protect this. This is our golden egg. This is why guests come to Fiji. It is our environment. It is our culture and tradition. It is the Fijian people.
本日はお忙しい中、第5回ツーリズムエキスポジャパン観光大臣会合にご参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。今回観光大臣会合は東京ビッグサイト会議棟でのリアル、YouTube ライブでのオンライン配信というハイブリッド開催にて実施いたします。まずは会場にお越しいただきました皆様への注意事項です。本日会場内は指定席とさせていただいております。会場前方のスクリーンにてご確認いただきますようよろしくお願い申し上げます。お座席の場所がご不明な場合は場内のスタッフにお声掛けください。また新型コロナウイルス感染症予防のため会場内ではマスクをご着用いただきますようよろしくお願いいたします。携帯電話はマナーモードに設定いただくか電源をお切りいただきますようお願いいたします。喫煙はロビーにございます喫煙場所でお願いいたします。ご理解ご協力のほどよろしくお願いいたします。また大臣会合は英語でのスピーチとなります。同時通訳レシーバーをご希望の方は会場入り口のスタッフにお声掛けください。なおお帰りの際は会場出口のスタッフにお渡しくださいますようお願いいたします。続いてオンライン配信をご視聴の皆様への注意事項です。本日の講演はライブ配信のため通信回線の状況により 音声や映像の乱れが生じる可能性がございます。万が一配信がうまく視聴できない場合は、通信環境を今一度ご確認いただき、再度アクセスをお願いいたします。まもなく開始いたしますので、今しばらくお待ちください。Thank you very much for participation to the 5th Tourism Expo Japan Ministerial Roundtable. This event is held as a hybrid event with the real meeting at the Tokyo Big Sight Conference Tower and the online streaming on YouTube Live. First of all, I'd like to tell some reminders to all the visitors. Today, some seats in the venue are reserved. Please check the screen at the front of the venue. If you can't find your seat, please ask a member of staff at the venue. Due to prevent COVID-19 pandemic, please wear a mask in the venue. Please set your mobile phone to silent mode or switch it off. Smoking is permitted only in the smoking area in the lobby on this floor. As there would be a presentation in Japanese, we prepared simultaneous interpretation. For those who use this service, please use the same receivers handed out at the entrance of this hall. When you leave, please return the receiver to the staff at the exit here. Next reminder is to all online viewers. Due to the live broadcasting of today's tourism ministerial meeting, there may be some audio and visual disruptions by the internet conditions. In that case, you're unable to view the live stream, so please check your communication environment and try accessing the site again. We'll begin shortly, so please wait for a moment. Thank you. 本日はお忙しい中、第5回ツーリズムエキスポジャパン観光大臣会合にご参加いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。今回観光大臣会合は東京ビッグサイト会議棟でのリアル、YouTube ライブでのオンライン配信というハイブリッド開催にて実施いたします。まずは会場にお越しいただきました皆様への注意事項です。本日会場内は指定席とさせていただいております。会場前方のスクリーンにてご確認いただきますようよろしくお願いいたします。お座席の場所がご不明な場合は場内のスタッフにお声掛けください。また新型コロナウイルス感染症予防のため会場内ではマスクをご着用いただきますようよろしくお願いいたします。携帯電話はマナーモードに設定いただくか、電源をお切りいただきますようお願いいたします。喫煙はロビーにございます喫煙場所でお願いいたします。ご理解、ご協力のほどよろしくお願いいたします。また、大臣会合は英語でのスピーチとなります。同時通訳レシーバーをご希望の方は、会場入り口のスタッフにお声掛けください。なお、お帰りの際は会場出口のスタッフにお渡しくださいますようお願いいたします。続いて
This is a reminder to all our viewers joining us online. Today's session will be broadcast live. It's live streaming. So depending on the internet, the communication conditions, there might be disruptions to the audio and the video. If you're unable to view the live stream, please check your communication environment and try accessing the site again. We will begin shortly. Please wait a few more moments.
What do we seek? You can't define it, can you? The destination or the journey? Do we escape or do we return? And why does soil make us feel we belong? Is color just energy we can see? And is taste just an adventure? Does music create harmony? Or does harmony create music? Time and space. But what is time but now? And what are questions but answers we already know? It's time. Go.
His Excellency, Mr. Hiroo Ishii, State Minister of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism. Mr. Ian Vilku, Director, United Nations World Tourism Organization. Your Excellencies, Ministers of Tourism, representatives of the tourism industry, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 5th TEJ Ministerial Roundtable. My name is Marjorie Dewey, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Thank you. The theme of today's roundtable is tackling climate change through tourism stakeholder endeavors, a very big topic. In November 2021, at the UN Climate Change Conference, COP26, government and tourism industry leaders issued the Glasgow Declaration for Climate Action in Tourism. The Glasgow Declaration recognizes the urgent need for a globally consistent plan for climate action in the tourism industry. We're delighted to bring you a most distinguished panel for our roundtable today to discuss what actions their nations are taking to address climate change. It includes tourism ministers and commissioners from 7 countries and senior executives from 4 international tourism organizations. Before we begin our discussion, please allow me to introduce our panelists and join me in welcoming them to the forum. We'll begin in the end of this table, His Excellency Dr. THOK Sokhom, Undersecretary of State, Kingdom of Cambodia. Next to him is the Honorable Edmund Bartlett, Minister of Tourism, Jamaica. His Excellency, Mr. Hiroo Ishii, State Minister of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism for Japan. His Excellency, Mr. Shalimar Hofer Tamano, Undersecretary, Department of Tourism, Republic of the Philippines. His Excellency Ambassador Lulama Smuts Ngoyama, Ambassador of the Republic of South Africa in Japan. And the ambassador is stepping in at very much the last minute, so kindly, on behalf of the Minister of Tourism, who was unable to join us today. Next to me will be Minister Ian Vilku of the UNWTO. And then to His Excellency, Mr. Fernando Valdez-Forrest, Secretary of State for Tourism, Ministry of Industry, Commerce, and Tourism for Spain. And next to him will be His Excellency, Mr. Azif Abdu Kakimov, I hope I pronounced that correctly, sir, Deputy Prime Minister, Republic of Uzbekistan, Minister of Tourism and Cultural Heritage, Republic of Uzbekistan. And from our international organizations, we have Mr. Shannon Stowell, CEO of Adventure Travel Trade Association. And we have Mr. Liao, Benjamin Liao, Vice Chair of PATA, the Pacific Asia Travel Association. And we have Ms. Maribel Rodriguez, Senior Vice President, World Travel and Tourism Council. Thank you to all our panelists. We're looking forward to a very thought-provoking discussion today. We thank you all. All right, now let us begin. I'd like to invite Mr. Vilku of the UNWTO to deliver a welcome message.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mr. State Minister Hiroo Ishii, Chairperson of the Tourism EXPO Japan Executive Committee, Your Excellencies, Ministers, Secretaries of State, Ambassadors, authorities, dear representative of the tourism industry, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Secretary General of the World Tourism Organization, I thank you all for joining us today. It is heartening to see the commitment and the successful hard work of the host and of the organizers of this prestigious Tourism Expo to bring together world tourism leaders from the public and private sector. And in such an important and challenging moment for our industry. We all work in one of the most resilient sectors of all, which has repeatedly shown its ability to adapt and to bounce back. However, the pandemic hits our sector hard and highlighted our vulnerabilities. The unprecedented impact is still being felt worldwide, and especially in this region, the hardest hit of all. This high-level roundtable is held in an encouraging context as the world begins to open up again, with international tourism showing lately a strong and steady recovery. With such a context marked by good news, but so many uncertainties and difficulties, we are here to discuss one of the greatest challenges of our time, the climate change, and the endeavor of the tourism sector. As many of you may recall, the UN Climate Change Conference, COP26, was held in Glasgow in November last year with the aim to strengthen climate ambition and action for the coming decade. The Glasgow Declaration was created to secure strong commitment from the tourist sector to cut tourism emissions at least in half over the next decade and reach net zero emissions as soon as possible before 2050. As underlined by the Secretary General of our organization last year, while many private businesses have led the way, a more ambitious sector-wide approach is needed to ensure tourism accelerates climate action in a meaningful way. Excellencies, dear colleagues, this crisis has shown where we can and must do better. To tackle the most pressing challenge of our time, we need to rethink how we operate. This means embracing new voices and new ideas and, most importantly, working together more than ever. Successfully transitioning to a more sustainable, inclusive and resilient tourism model will largely depend on giving the right priority to the public-private collaboration and partnership, which is crucial in advancing climate action in tourism. From the UNWTO, we address this challenge working hand in hand with our members and with our partners, betting on the public-private partnership. In the recovery and modernization that we want, the contribution of each stakeholder, of the authorities and tourism entities like the ones participating in this important roundtable, will be decisive. UNWTO invites you all to tackle the challenge together, sharing experiences and approaches of government and of the private sector. I am pleased to see today we will hear from some of the leading voices of our sector, and I also look forward to hearing inspiring examples of climate measures in tourism action. I wish you all an inspiring, enriching, and fruitful roundtable. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those warm words, and it's a good point for us to begin our discussion today. I'd like to just go through the framework of what we'll be doing today so it's clear for everyone. The roundtable will be divided into 2 sessions. One session will address national policies related to climate change and tourism. We'll learn what challenges our panelists have identified, what steps they're taking to address them, and how they are ensuring that climate change measures are incorporated into their national policies. Each panelist will speak for 3 minutes. In the second half of our roundtable, we'll take up the subject of public-private partnerships, exploring how governments and the private sector can better cooperate to achieve climate change measures and find new solutions for moving forward in tourism in our post-pandemic world. Each panelist will again share their thoughts for another 3 minutes. Then we will conclude with the closing summary remarks by Mr. Viklu. So let us open our first segment by hearing about national policies on climate change from our panelists from first the Asia region. We'll start in Asia, then move to Europe, then move to the Caribbean and Africa and our international organizations. So we'll begin this first segment with Undersecretary Tamano to tell us what's going on in the Philippines.
Konnichiwa.
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to join the 5th Tourism Expo Japan and represent the Philippine Tourism Minister, Maria Esperanza Cristina Garcia Frasco, in this roundtable discussion. First of all, allow me to express the profound sympathies from the Filipino nation to the entire Japanese community as it gets a grip from tropical storm Nanmadol that ravaged with record rainfall and ferocious winds the western part of your country just a few days ago. It is heartbreaking to learn about the extensive damage done and the loss of life caused by this super typhoon. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all of our Japanese friends and those affected by this devastating storm. As we make sense of a reality that life must go on, it is but crucial, if not very timely, that we have gathered here to discuss an enduring global issue that has confronted us time and again, climate change. And there could be no perfect backdrop to put this topic at the right perspective than looking at how Super Typhoon Nanmadol has impacted this beautiful country. The Philippines, like Japan, is no stranger to typhoons and other natural and man-made calamities, mainly because of its geographic location. It has always been vulnerable to adverse effects of climate change, such as rising sea levels, increasing frequency and extremity of typhoons, drought, and climate-related illnesses. Each year, an average of 20 typhoons are recorded to have hit our country, thereby resulting to loss of lives and damage to property and agricultural products. The tourism industry is not spared from climate-related disasters. In fact, just when we're about to reopen our international leisure, last December 2021, Visayas and Mindanao regions were ravaged by Super Typhoon Rai, or Odette, leaving a total of 13.3 billion pesos damage in agricultural goods and affecting 36 million families. As an industry relies heavily on the beauty of the natural environment and resources, the Philippines Department of Tourism acknowledges the crucial role of the tourism sector in mitigating the adverse effects of climate change. That is our unique mandate in tourism, to both sell and preserve. This means that it is not about the numbers that matter the most, but ultimately how to strike a balance between business opportunities and our social responsibility. As we move forward in the post-pandemic world, we envision a tourism industry that is anchored on sustainable development, paired with effective local governance and strong national government coordination. No business venture can flourish on profit alone. If it is not sustainable in itself, then it cannot make any significant contribution to the industry. To prolong the life cycle of tourist destinations, sustainable tourism policies need to be integrated with wider economic, social, environmental policy considerations within an overall sustainable framework. We must therefore look at the basic elements of sustainable development, namely ecological sustainability, economic sustainability, and equity. The Philippine DOT reiterates the need for tourism education on responsible tourism. The department has joined hands with other national government agencies such as the Department of Natural Environment, the Department of Agriculture, Department of Interior, and local government to minimize the adverse effects on our natural resources. Through a well-coordinated and collaborative approach towards harnessing the potential of our tourism destinations and revitalizing the tourism industry as a whole, we can all be assured the sustainable tourism development is translated from theory into concrete action. The next few years post-pandemic will surely focus on the recovery programs and policies that will not only promote pandemic resilience, but also advocate for climate change mitigation. Indeed, instilling this culture of tourism would entail a paradigm shift among all of us in the public and private sectors alike, to change how we think and do business, to care more about our environment, our natural gems, our tourist attractions, and prioritize resilient, inclusive, and sustainable growth. We continue to remain hopeful that we will overcome potential challenges as we witness the commitment and initiative of global tourism players and the converging towards a better tourism industry for all. Go seicho, arigato gozaimasu.
Thank you, Undersecretary Tamano, and thank you very much for your Japanese as well. Now let's turn to the Kingdom of Cambodia and Undersecretary of State, Dr. THOK Sokhom. Doctor.
Thank you. First of all, Excellency, State Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister, and others, ladies and gentlemen. Under the wise, brilliant leadership of Samdech Akyat Mahasenapadai, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Cambodia, Cambodia Ministry of Tourism has tackled and mitigated the climate change crisis as we conceptualize, envision, and develop many overarching framework policy such as pro-poor community-based tourism, national ecotourism policy, regional the development of master plan standard operating procedure, and roadmap for the tourism regulation and law to ensure environmentally sustainable and socially responsible tourism development nationwide with equitable benefit sharing, as well as in proportion to regional and global level. Above all, in close cooperation and collaboration with relevant line ministry, sub-regional administration authority, and countrywide on the green tourism development and corporate social responsibility, Cambodia has launched its afforestation policy and awareness campaign, One Tourist, One Tree, and clean our beaches regularly by reducing the emission from the deforestation and forest degradation, aim to develop and transform Cambodia as an acclaimed world-class destination and a must-see destination in a lifetime. Noticeably, Cambodia has received UN Green Climate Fund further to advocate and sustaining her afforestation policy and preventing from deforestation and degradation. Manifestly, under the leadership of Dr. Thongkhon, Minister of Tourism, we has established 56 community-based ecotourism sites on how to reduce poverty and remote disadvantaged community by diversifying sources of income of the community people. Moreover, we have other 15 community-based ecotourism sites were created recently. On the other hand, we saving increasing the friendly in line with the ASEAN Tourism Strategic Plan. MOT has also established Cambodia Green Hotel Standard and CBT Standard, etc. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sokhom. Now we'll turn to Uzbekistan and hear from Deputy Prime Minister Abdulkakimov on his efforts in his country. Thank you.
Dear ministers, ladies and gentlemen, climate change is one of the main challenges of our time, which directly affects on the quality of our life and the development of the global tourism industry. The consequences of climate change are being fully manifested in our region as well. The RLC disaster and climate change in Central Asia are twice as intense as the world average. Uzbekistan pays the most serious attention to promoting the issues of the green agenda, the conservation of ecosystems and biodiversity, as well as the careful use of natural resources. The country is actively implementing the green economy transition strategy, the renewable and hydrogen energy development program, and 200 million seedlings or trees are planted annually under the Green Land program in Uzbekistan. Due to these measures, by 2030, the energy efficiency of our economy will double, and share of renewable energy will be at least 25%. As part of the Paris Agreement, we have made an additional commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emission per unit of GDP by 35% by 2030 compared to 2010. To achieve this goal, a national low-carbon development strategy has been developed, which will provide for the achievement full carbon neutrality by 2050. In addition, together with the countries of Central Asia, we are taking action in the field of combating drought and water shortage, mitigating the consequences of the RLC tragedy and socio-economic development of the surrounding territories. In this regard, we count on international support for projects and programs within the framework of the activities of UN Multi-Partner Human Security Trust Fund for RLC region in Uzbekistan. In conclusion, I would like to note that in 2023, the Republic of Uzbekistan plans to hold 2 major conferences of UN conventions. And also, as you all know, that next year in 2023, Uzbekistan will host UNWTO General Assembly in the historical city of Samarkand. And using this opportunity, I would like to invite all of you to Uzbekistan, to Samarkand.
Lastly, as you're well aware, next year we will be holding the General Assembly of the UNWTO at Samarkand, which is a very famous city, which is a crossroad of the Silk Road. And so we'd like all of you to participate in this conference. Please visit the Uzbekistan to participate in that conference. Thank you very much.
Deputy Prime Minister, I have a feeling you're going to have many people visiting you next year, especially with the Japanese invitation.
Yes,
Thank you for
we are preparing. Please. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next, we'll turn to our host country, Japan, to hear from His Excellency Mr. Hiroo Ishii, the State Minister of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism.
Good afternoon. Ministers of various countries, representatives of various organizations, welcome to Japan. I'd like to represent Japan and extend my sincere welcome to you. It's a great pleasure for us to be able to hold this Tourism Ministers Roundtable for the first time in 3 years. Now, in the latest edition of the Travel and Tourism Development Index report published by the World Economic Forum, Japan was ranked first. We're very pleased that our efforts in tourism so far have been highly evaluated. On the other hand, as it relates to today's subtitle, the fight against COVID-19 is a common global challenge, and Japan is no exception. In response to COVID-19 pandemic, Japan has implemented strict border measures to date. However, we're mitigating measures now and now allow entry into Japan in group tours without tour conductors. So we continue to look at the infection status in Japan and abroad, people's needs and border measures of other major countries. We'd like to continue discussions within the government on the appropriate border measures. Now, while the progress toward recovery from COVID has just begun, the COVID pandemic has changed the consciousness of travelers around the world, and more people want to travel sustainably. The issue of climate change is another challenge for achieving sustainable development, and there's more demand than ever to promote sustainable tourism in response to changes in tourist consciousness. In that endeavor, we believe that the UNWTO and the various governments should play important roles to lead the effort. In cooperation with the UNWTO office in Japan, our country has formulated the Japanese version of the Sustainable Tourism Guidelines in conformity with international standards. We also believe that it's necessary for each region to steadily promote sustainable tourism destination management while making the most of their respective tourism resources, not only in terms of global warming and environment aspects independently, but also in terms of economic and social aspects. In this way, it is important for each country and institutions to promote their own efforts based on their ideas, as well as to share knowledge on their respective efforts to address common issues. The Tourism Expo Japan Ministerial Roundtable is an appropriate venue for such work, and Japan will continue to implement various measures to realize sustainable tourism, including support for the implementation of guidelines and support for revitalization and high value-added development of tourist destinations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister Ishii. To conclude our tour through Asia, I'd like to invite Mr. Benjamin Liao, Vice Chair of PATA, to give us his insights. Mr. Liao.
Thank you, Marjorie. Your Excellencies and esteemed colleagues, I'm very honored to be here to speak for PATA. At PATA, we see that the travel industry is at a pivotal point with the convergence of the stage-wise recovery across Asia-Pacific, coupled with two key trends: the rise of the conscious traveler and the rise of the conscious community. Based on a recent Economist survey, the vast majority of travelers, particularly those from across Asia-Pacific, are expressing a heightened interest. Over 90% say the pandemic has changed the way they think about sustainable tourism, and well over 4 in 5 citing the need for more sustainable tourism practices. At the same time, communities or destinations across our region want to see the return of the economic benefits of tourism without the negative impacts on their local environments and communities. Here in Asia-Pacific, we've experienced the direct impacts of climate change with super typhoons, unpredictable weather patterns, over-tourism, and depletion of natural environs. Communities and responsible governments want the return of travel, but in a healthier form. Former and potential travel staff want work that align with their values, gives quality of life, and where they are treated fairly and with respect. I call this the rise of the conscious communities. The recovery is currently uneven, and now is the time for us to prepare well and reinforce our infrastructure, staffing, and preparedness. In the last year, we've developed online training, protocols, and advisory on the topics of destination resilience, on zero plastics in hospitality and tourism, net zero methodology for hotels, reduced wastage in food service, and informal workers support initiatives, as well as community-based tourism and sustainable gastronomy tourism. We advocate for best practices in work culture, fair conditions, and policies to re-attract talent. This is both a recovery and sustainability issue as well. And we continue to support our members with frequent insights on evolving business opportunities, collaborative benefits, and thought leadership to support their recoveries. Now is the time to invest and pivot the growth towards a more positive future. We look forward to continuing to support all of you. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you, Mr. Liao. Now we're going to turn to Europe, and we'll hear how the European members of our panel are addressing climate change. We'll begin with Secretary of State for Tourism for Spain, Fernando Valdez-Vareist.
Good afternoon, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, distinguished Minister Ishii. Thank you for your welcoming. Thank you for having us here in this debate, as well as my friend John Velku, always hosting these reflections. Just let me, in the 3 minutes I think I have, share with you, I think, 3 main reflections regarding climate change in terms of tourism and how we are working in Spain. I think we are about to pass the worst of the pandemic. At least 2022 was an extraordinary year in terms of tourism in our country. We've seen how figures have grown and maintain security and safety of residents as well as tourists. So now we can again face the main threats regarding the future of tourism, and climate change is obviously one of them. Regarding to this, I have to say that sustainability is not just one part of our strategy, it is the main part of our strategy. What we're doing right now regarding tourism in Spain, it has to do with sustainability all along the value chain. It has to do in what we invest, it has to do in who and with whom we work, so it is the main part of our strategy. And if I have to share with you 3 reflections, just let me stay with these. First of all, the importance of destination. We have realized how important it is to tackle climate change working with destinations. It is in destinations, in touristic destinations, when we can really make a change. It is in destinations where we can work in efficiency, when we can work reducing climate change. So co-governance with local authorities and local entrepreneurs, it is fundamental. Second, experiences. We need to adapt touristic experiences towards climate change. We don't need only to perform or to increase the number of experiences related to tourism. We need to adapt those experiences always to climate change in terms of adaptation and in terms of integrating our values, our new sustainability values and experiences. And last but not least, social sustainability. We think that when we talk about sustainability, we only talk about environmental sustainability, which is key. But let's not forget about social sustainability. It is a key for all of us to perform policies between residents and tourism. We need to strengthen the relation between them. So that, for the moment, regarding to our strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. It's wonderful to hear about the social aspect as well. That's clearly important. Now to talk more broadly about both Europe and the world efforts, I'd like to hear from Maribel Rodriguez, Senior Vice President at WTTC.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the Excellencies for inviting WTTC and the private sector to be part of this important and so needed event. The cooperation of travel and tourism will be essential to reaching net zero, and this unity we were discussing before. The sector estimates to account 8 to 11% of CO2 emissions, aviation 2%. And as a sector, we are essentially threatened by extreme heat and rising seas. As part of the problem, as part of the problem, and for the sake of our own future, we must be part of the solution. But still, many touristical destinations are not yet prepared. While 193 signatories of the Paris Agreement have signed contributions, their depth of ambitions varies. And despite of all the efforts, the finding of emission gaps report of 2021 were distressing. We are on track for 2.7 degrees warning in the next century. So what can we do? We cannot give up. We need action, firm, fast to cut emissions. And national governments must lead to improve monitoring climate change on tourist destinations. We need to help to adapt with climate mitigation strategies and to ensure they're properly financed. Governments can also help destinations to help themselves, incentivizing sustainability certificates, awards, promotional opportunities, highlight good work already done, best practices, and raise awareness of saving made through investment in renewable energy. It will not only protect destinations from harm, but create new businesses as well. The position of WTTC is very clear. We are taking action now to help the sector lower its impact on the environment. And after 2 years spent dealing with the fallout of the pandemic, our members are now ready to tackle and this to become our focus again. But we need to create guidance for the sector so it can continue to decarbonize. That's why we released our first ever roadmap. It will lay out the very path which the sector will reach net zero by 2050. It identifies the things standing on the way of a greener future, and it sets targets for businesses with guidance on how they can be reached. It ends with a call for a faster action, for more ambition. In addition, we have launched our Hotel Sustainability Basics, and we are launching consumer awareness campaigns, which are designed to help people to travel more responsible. With this, we are really focused on expanding our economic impact report, focused on social impact. Through those initiatives we will and we play our part. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Now we're going to cross the Atlantic Ocean and go to the Caribbean to hear the perspective from Minister Bartlett of the Jamaica Ministry of Tourism.
Thank you ever so much. Your Excellency, your host, Mr. Ishii, I offer my warmest appreciation to your kind hospitality and the very professional and efficient way you've organized this 6th EXPO, Tourism Expo, along with the UNWTO. Distinguished partners all, we begin on the basis that the environment is the product, and therefore climate change challenges the sustainability of the product. So tourism must act. And the action, therefore, is based on the very nature of tourism itself, being a confluence of economic and social activities that must all come together seamlessly to create an experience that people travel the world over to consume. The essence, therefore, is any policy has to begin with the coordination of these moving parts. Training the development of the human capacity, first of all, to appreciate the importance of the environment itself, to manage the environment, and to act in accordance with the best practices that will enable sustainability. So as a policy for a government, we begin on the basis of human capital development. We know that the nature of small economies, such as ours in the Caribbean, is the absence of resources, and the search, therefore, to find ways and means of survival. And these survival methods are not always in congruence with the best environmental practices. So we have to educate. And so the number one policy, educate, educate, educate the people. The second is to provide a basis for economic sustainability, to enable the access to capital in order to convert the information and ideas that we've given them with regards to management into material things with a value and a price. And thirdly, to create a marketing opportunity for those products which are generated to be properly displayed, marketed, and to provide the returns that we want. Within that broad context, therefore, we have to look at what kind of institutional framework is necessary to support this. And among the things that we have done is to establish a Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center that brings young people across the academic stream to engage in rigor, to find new ideas and new ways of enabling a better understanding of how to manage the process. In closing my 3 minutes, I just want to quickly say that this is critical because the recovery has not been linear. And the recovery from the pandemic is in fact more disruptive than the disruptions of the pandemic itself. Value chain disruptions, human capital disruptions that have resulted in our not being able to go back to where we were. But the final challenge is that we must be nimble, we must be adaptive, and most importantly, we have to enable sustainable growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Bartlett. Those were very inspiring leadership words for us. Let's head now to Africa, and I'd like to invite Ambassador to Japan, Ambassador Ngoyama, to join us and make his comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Program Director. Excellencies and ministers present here, I would like to start by saying that our intervention will focus mainly on South African climate change tourism policies, partnerships and challenges that the sector faces in implementing climate change measures. The South African National Climate Change Response Policy identified tourism as one of the sectors economically vulnerable to measures taken both internationally and nationally to reduce green high gas emission, given that the tourism sector contributes significantly to the country's GDP. Climate change could have detrimental impacts on socio-economic growth and well-being. So South Africa started by rethinking, coming up with a theme that says rethinking tourism opportunities await, in trying to reboot tourism. The government of South Africa developed the National Tourism and Climate Change Response Program of Action. The main purpose of the program of action is to ensure that the tourism sector responds rapidly and effectively to the impact of climate change through a balanced set of mitigation and adaptations. The first one amongst those is coming up with this plan of action is the understanding vulnerability and building adaptive capacity, climate change, and adaptation. The Department of Tourism in South Africa has a tourism project. The project seeks to build resilience and adaptive capacity of the tourism sector to the impacts of climate change. In 2012, we partnered with Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and Environment together with GIZ to conduct baseline assessment and on the impacts of climate change. The second one on the plan of action is reducing greenhouse gases from tourism activities, climate change. We have developed the tourism resource efficiency program in order to reduce greenhouse gases from tourism activities. We also developed the South African Tourism Climate Change Communication Strategy to ensure that we take on board all citizens of our country and stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would like to say that I'm taking the opportunity to persuade the citizens of the land of the rising sun to take note of all the changes and the good policy that we've put in place and visit South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and I do imagine that you're going to see some visitors as Japan opens up. Finally, to conclude the first segment on national policies for climate change, I'd like to invite Mr. Shannon Stowell, CEO of Adventure Travel Trade Association.
Thank you so much. And Thank you to my esteemed Japanese hosts for the kind invitation for today and for all of your attention for being here this afternoon on such a critical issue. So coming from the adventure travel perspective, I bring to the policy discussion encouragement to focus on ways policies can motivate better behavior instead of punish those behaviors we want to see when it comes to climate action. I was alarmed the other day to learn of a survey that the results have not gone public yet, but of a major North American travel agency consortium. And in that survey, which is anonymous and private, climate change was of least concern to the group, which is shocking to me still today. So we have a long, long way to go, and in an environment where we're already being heavily impacted. So travel accounts for 8% of global emissions. We all know that. The air only accounts for 12% of that, which means the remainder comes from accommodations, transport, meals, shopping, activities, etc. Adventure travel businesses, and really most businesses in travel, are frequently very small, and they need help to transform. It's very hard for the small business to see how their part plays into the whole, and yet most of the businesses are small. They need help. Imagine, for example, tax credits for companies shifting to electric vehicles or lodging providers transitioning to renewable energy. As you may be aware, the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act in the US is an example of how government policy can motivate and support action. It invests in clean, new domestic energy sources so that our energy future can be determined by ingenuity. The bill will enable the US to cut greenhouse gas emissions by an estimated 40% by 2030. Adventure travel does not cause climate change any more than any other type of travel or activity. But one thing that sets our niche apart is how much adventure travel relies on the very things that climate is impacting, nature, for example. So I encourage policymakers to enact policies to support adventure travel and other small entrepreneurs and support them in their efforts to inspire, and I'll borrow from my colleague, His Excellency from Jamaica, educate those guests about climate change and how it's going to impact them, support them in their efforts to decarbonize their businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stoll. Education is definitely emerging as a very important topic of today's discussion. All right, I commend the panel. We are actually ahead of time. You all are amazingly staying on time. So that's wonderful. Thank you for that. We'll move now into the second topic, and that will allow us to delve a bit more deeply into the public-private partnerships, which organizations are, that the nations here represented are forming, and which organizations are driving change in the climate change space. So we'll begin again with Asia, and we'll start again with the Republic of the Philippines, Under Secretary Tamano.
Partnerships. The success or failure of the tourism largely depends on how people will respond to the call of nation building. The Philippine Department of Tourism works closely with the local communities and stakeholders as we work towards inclusive growth and the protection of our natural and cultural heritage and safeguard the integrity and diversity of the country's national resources. We believe that the power to make a change is in the hands and with our people's hands. Together, we will take advantage of this optimistic outlook at tourism and its recovery at a promising pace, not only to bounce back, but to make our industry better and stronger. With the help and support of all the stakeholders, the private sectors, the local government units, the local communities, we can look at the future with hope, where tourism is a major pillar for recovery and a source of pride for our peoples and a real turning point for our region. Arigato gozaimasu.
Thank you, Mr. Tamano, Undersecretary Tamano. Next, we'll turn to the Kingdom of Cambodia, Dr. Sokhom.
Thank you so much. I think just go very short but we have been established under the leadership of the government. The public-private partnership here is we talk about one with the private company and another one with the development partners and also with the NGO that we all together, hand in hand, collaboration for the climate action that we have done in our country, as well as we launched the campaign, the One Tourist, One Tree, and environmentally sustainable and socially responsible tourism development as the form for the responsible tourism. And also we do establish the pro-poor community-based tourism to help with the poor people who live at the disadvantaged area. And we rely on the private sector to help promote and act the climate change action, so that we have done a good, that we continue to do more to sensitize, to streamline to the people. And thank you.
Thank you, Undersecretary Sokhom. Now we'll turn again to Uzbekistan and Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very interesting experience, and just let me tell about our experience in Uzbekistan. Recently, we just turned into operations a newly constructed international airport in Samarkand, as I mentioned, historical city of Samarkand, and the private operator put almost $200 million for a new terminal, and now we already get a beautiful facility in Samarkand. And another interesting experience, we are trying to create so-called touristic villages in a different region of Uzbekistan, especially in mountain areas. And if local inhabitants are creating at least 20 so-called family guest houses, in Japanese, the minshuku. So we are providing and put, as a government, we put investment for roads, for electricity supply, water supply. It also was a very interesting experience. And for example, 4 years ago, we didn't have any family guest houses in the regions, but today we have almost 4,000 guest houses in all our regions. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. We will go next to State Minister Ishii of Japan.
Thank you for another opportunity to speak. The COVID-19 pandemic has cast a big shadow over us, but I think that when we confront such a crisis, we should take that as an opportunity for transformation and action. The issue of climate change and how we can promote tourism in a post-pandemic world while coexisting with COVID-19 is a common challenge for all of us. Earlier, I spoke under the theme of national policy. Now, naturally, there are limits to what public institutions, such as the national government, can do to address this issue. The realization of sustainable development through tourism cannot be achieved without cooperation between the public and private sectors, and partnerships are essential. Our government is providing support so that the tourism industry can overcome the difficult times and to collaborate to develop the charm of the region into sustainable tourism. So to give you a good example of how various people involved in the region are working together to develop a regional tourism destination, I introduce you to Toba City. It's located about 4 hours from Tokyo by Shinkansen, and tourism and fishing are two major industries. People involved in both industries have collaborated to create opportunities for tourists to learn about fishing, and they allow tourists to participate in fish auctions so they can buy the fish themselves, and then they can take the fish back to the inns and have it cooked for them. The experience itself becomes a signature tourism product, and the satisfaction of the tourists is increased. Japan has a diverse culture, and local industries, agriculture and fisheries are practiced in every region of the country. By utilizing such regional characteristics and rediscovering their virtues, local residents can reappreciate the value of their region and take pride in it. It has a positive impact on local industries, improve the charm of the region as a destination, and also provides valuable experiences to tourists. So it creates a virtuous cycle for both local communities and tourists. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected the behavioral patterns of tourists. The general trend for tourists is shifting their consumption from goods towards experiences. Toba City is a good example of creating communities where people enjoy living and visiting, in which tourist destinations can be self-sustaining in a sustainable manner under such changes. In terms of efforts to tackle climate change, an example of a region in Hokkaido that's home to Lake Shikotsu, a lake in a national park that's famous for its water quality. In this region, the whole region is working together to aim for zero carbon and maintain the rich nature. Efforts to create a zero carbon park based on renewable energy, experiential tourism of picking up trash from the lake, and nature experience camps where visitors learn about the natural environment are offered. Shikotsuko style is what's being proposed. I can't introduce all of the other examples in Japan. In each region, we're actively implementing efforts to realize sustainable tourism. The UNWTO World Forum on Gastronomy Tourism will be held in Nara December. We hope that you'll come, join us from all over the world and experience the charm of Japan at that time. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister Ishii. And it sounds like there's another opportunity for many of you to come back to Japan, to Nara, for that gastronomy conference. That sounds wonderful. Finally, representing Asia, I'll turn again to Benjamin Lau of PADA.
The PADA network consists of representatives from all corners of the travel ecosystem, spanning public and private. PADA brings members of the travel megasector together through a variety of forums, projects, and initiatives to drive achievement of sustainability and therefore climate change initiatives. Some of those initiatives include tourism destination resilience training. At the beginning of 2022, PADA, with support from GIZ, issued a comprehensive tourism destination resilience program to help destinations anticipate and better prepare for both natural and man-made disasters. Reduced plastics usage, with support from UNESCO and Expedia, PADA had produced guidelines to achieve zero plastic usage in hospitality and tourism. In Hotel Net Zero, protocols developed in collaboration with Greenview also helped with sustainability in hotels. In Hotel Owners for Tomorrow forums, to conduct best practice shared across investors, developers, owners, managers will be launched in collaboration with Greenview during PADA events in 2023. Improved tourism supply chain management. PADA has worked in progress with TourLink and end-to-end assessment to enhance the supply chain in tourism. And lastly, but not leastly, sustainable gastronomic tourism. With the appointment of our ambassador, master chef, judge, and host, Audra Maurice, PADA is advising and supporting sustainable gastronomy discussions, events, and marketing programs across its destination members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lau. Next, let's hear from Europe again on this topic of partnerships, and we'll turn to Secretary Valdez-Verreist from Spain.
Thank you. Following with my previous intervention, I would like to come back in this partnership to local governments. Again, we believe that local governance gives, and I want to stress this term, local authorities and local companies and businesses their own sovereignty to plan tourism to promote the better way to offer tourism. For us, we've been developing, it's not a strategy, it's a methodology. It has no end. We develop a methodology which we call a smart destination, which includes innovation, which includes the use of technology, which includes measures related with accessibility and governance. And this methodology gives local managers, as well public and private, the means to better plan their offer. So they can integrate sustainability in all their decisions, so they can evaluate what they are doing, and this is very important to all of us. I think we need to evaluate every single thing that we do in this path towards net zero activities or towards climate change adaptation. We need to evaluate, and it gives the means and the criteria to do so. So when we talk about public-private partnership, it is true. We need to do it globally. We need to do it as at a state level, but it is important to do it as well, and we are trying to enhance that at a local level. This local sovereignty, when we think about new strategies, new methodologies to perform these sustainable tourism activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Next, again to the WTTC and Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you. We can reach net zero by 2050, but only if governments, businesses and community will work together. Just take one example, the Glasgow Declaration reached last year in the COP26, where WTTC was a signatory. It requires organizations to cut global tourism emissions before 2050 with 5 pathways: measuring progress, decarbonizing, regenerating, collaborating, and accessing finance. Our members share the same spirit, and they were indispensable to our net zero roadmap, the first of its kind in the sector. It highlights many unique risks to travel and tourism, but it depends on us, the whole economy, to succeed. With 5 challenges in particular. First, the measurement and reporting of emissions. Who do define them? Who do you measure them? Who is responsible? It is clear we need more consistent methodologies and metrics for reporting. Second, there is a fragmented and fast-changing regulatory landscape. This is often confusing and costly for businesses and breeds uncertainty. Third, there are insufficient budgets for decarbonization. It is not but a lack of policy incentive from governments. Fourth, there is a need for more sustainable infrastructures to support net zero. Ports, airports, energy grids and buildings must be upgraded and retrofit. And finally, our roadmap showed sustainable aviation fuels could make a huge difference. According to our data, aviation emissions will fall slowly between 2023 and 2035. But from 2035, new aircraft and sustainable fuels will be transformative. Only if we could speed at this timeline, we could make a big difference. The quicker we scale up, the faster we reach net zero. In WTTC, we cannot increase the budget of governments, neither build new infrastructure, but we can play a role guiding and measuring. This is a crucial issue which will only grow in importance. Better accounting requires better tools, ones that are simple and easy to use. For instance, we supported the Hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative. It helps hotels calculate the carbon footprint. And finally, at an individual level, 34 travel and tourism businesses joined the Science-Based Targets Initiative, while at the same time, 39 businesses are officially part of the Race to Zero. Those are the kind of partnerships that will lead the sector to a greener future. We need more of them, and in WTTC, we will do all possible to forward. And I hope to see you all in Riyadh in our Global Summit in November to continue this global travel and tourism debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. It seems like this group is going to have a lot of trips to take in the next few months, Riyadh as well. So there we go. Now we will turn once again to Minister Bartlett from Jamaica.
Thank you. Let's change the thought a little bit, because I think this discussion has to help us to reinvent, if not reimagine, tourism, what it has been, and whether we're satisfied with the pre-COVID tourism and what of the post-COVID tourism. The call for public and private partnership is in keeping with this confluence of parts and many moving parts we mentioned that have to come together seamlessly. And so how do we make this happen is the challenge that we face. And it's not just about public policies through legislative or regulatory arrangements, but it's also about making sure that it is understood that climate change and good environmental practice is an economic activity with a bottom line that provides profits. And so one of the things we have to do in this whole exercise is to bring these partners together to realize that the small entrepreneur, what we call the small and medium tourism enterprise, who is really the owner of the experience of tourism, must make a profit from it, in the same way that the large investors for big hotels and airplanes and cruise ships must make a profit. And that understanding must be had. And some of the critical players in the past, the small fisherman who has never understood what it is to have the larger cash in the deep sea, he must now be empowered to do one thing: understand that if he continues to fish in the sanctuary, he will destroy the basis of his future livelihood. And how do we create now the opportunity to convert that understanding that he has into an economic activity? So we in Jamaica have established with NGOs foundations which deal with the whole business of helping to do that transformation. So we provide glass-bottom boats for the small fishermen to go out into the deep, not just to fish, but also to do other things like taking pictures of the deterioration of the coral reefs and to bring back to show that they are reducing the level of fish because the coral reefs are destroyed. And in that way, they change their whole approach to it. So my take on the game is that PPPs is about creating a better understanding of what the responsibility of everyone is in ensuring that sustainable tourism is realized. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Bartlett. We will turn again to South Africa and Ambassador Ngonyama.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. On partnership, given the cross-sectoral nature of climate change and tourism, the Department of Tourism periodically partners with other government departments and entities on key climate change projects. For example, the Department of Tourism partnered with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and Environment. It partnered with GIZ and the National Cleaner Production Center of South Africa, NCPC, SA. It also partnered with different communication houses, both electronic and print media, to ensure that it creates very strong impact on the communication side for everybody to be able to come on board. There is a shortage of capacity to deal with climate change that stems from limited human and financial resources, and a shortage of relevant expertise and skills. A solution to salvage the situation could be to establish private-public partnerships in order to mobilize funding for implementation of climate measures. I am sure, ladies and gentlemen, all of us agree that there is a need and therefore a very strong and solid cobweb of all the stakeholders and to be built to ensure that we spread the word of the climate change impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. We will now turn once again to Mr. Stoll at ADA.
Thank you so much. So I think it's no surprise that collaboration, collective action is the only way we're going to tackle such a thorny global problem. We're living in a not quite a post-pandemic world made even more unpredictable by climate change. And travelers are more focused on safety than ever. COVID, from unprecedented natural disasters. They want a sense of certainty that the world has always been, but in some ways is even more so uncertain. One thing that can help is programs that empower consumers, providing them with information and a way to contribute to meaningful solutions. Mechanisms that can focus and aggregate stakeholders for maximum leverage will be required. There are many examples of collective action, success in solving social and environmental issues. Think back to issues like blood diamonds, for example. That was a thorny one that took a lot of different stakeholders. None so far are reaching the problem of global warming. So at the ATTA, we're doing what we can to bring the collective power of our travel sector to the climate cause with a particular initiative focused on carbon removal technologies and carbon removal innovators. Tomorrow's Air is that effort. It's a first-of-its-kind collective dedicated to climate education in travel and supporting carbon removal technology innovators. The sheer volume of emissions to be cleaned from our atmosphere, 10 gigatons per year by 2050, means that no single entity or stakeholder group will be able to achieve this goal alone. Recognizing the potential of travel to be a force for good, we created Tomorrow's Air to aggregate and harness the power of travel for this purpose. I believe that many solutions like this one, and we need many, many more vehicles like this, ones which provide incentives for stakeholders to convene with a common purpose, that holds the key to our success in the coming years. Thank you very much for your time and your energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stoll. I've not chaired a panel like this before where we finished so early. You are all amazing. What I'd like to do, because we do have a little bit of time, if any of you have additional remarks, please.
Thank you very much. I do have additional remarks. The building of resilience, I think, is a cornerstone in enabling sustainability. And perhaps because tourism is regarded as the most resilient of all industries, but it is the most vulnerable, there is a case for us to come together to build the institutional and other framework for this. Most of the countries that are the real drivers of the tourism experience are small, very tourism-dependent countries that are highly vulnerable. Vulnerable to seismic impacts, to climate events, hurricanes, typhoons, monsoons. In the case of us in the Caribbean, we've had hurricanes in recent times, the likeness of which we've never seen in centuries. One, Irma and Maria, if you heard about 2017-18, which destroyed an entire island. And in other instances, up to 98% of the GDP of some other countries. Haiti, for example, had great impacts of earthquakes, one measuring 10 on the Richter scale. Devastated the country, has not recovered. So the need, therefore, to enable those countries to have capacity, one, to track these disruptions, to be able to mitigate against it when it comes, to manage it when it actually gets there, and then to recover. And more importantly, to thrive after recovery is critical. And so we in Jamaica, when we developed the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center, it was about giving education, is enabling the countries in the Caribbean in particular, and in the wider world, to understand these 5 points that I raised. But resilience building is not just an academic exercise. It requires funding. I think the world needs to appreciate that more disruptions than this pandemic, which we now experience, will come. And therefore, we need to build now the economic capacity to deal with disruptions. And so I think one of the things that we could call for from this EXPO Ministerial Roundtable is the establishment of a global tourism resilience fund to enable small and highly dependent countries on tourism, because some of them are in the Philippines, the Maldives, it's in the Indian Ocean, the Caribbean. We are the most tourism-dependent region on earth, 28 islands of the Caribbean. And when these disruptions come, it devastates our economy, and it leaves us in a state of economic depravity. So I think that tourism, which is now the fastest growing economic activity on earth, with the capacity to recover quickly and drive economic transformation, must take a responsibility to enable these small countries in particular, who are at the heart of the tourism experience, to be able to recover quickly, and to thrive afterwards. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister Bartlett. A Global Tourism Resilience Fund, I think that's something we can all walk away from today and hopefully look to support and how we figure out ways to make that happen. Undersecretary Tamano, I think you had some words as well.
Thank you, ma'am. I agree with the gentleman from Jamaica and the gentleman from Spain, that we should really go down to the local level, to the destination. We are lucky in the Philippines. Our new Department of Tourism Secretary was a former two-term mayor of a big municipality in Cebu. And it was also in Cebu and in Bohol, which these islands are very famous with our Japanese friends, that Typhoon Rai happened. And it destroyed around 1,000 pump boats. And pump boats are very important for tourism in Cebu and Bohol because of the island hopping tourism business, the snorkeling business, and the diving business. So the governor of Cebu had to call on all the pump boat owners and realize that most of them don't have insurance, because these are what we call MSMEs. I don't know if it's the same word here, right? Medium, small, micro industries, as mentioned by our friend from Jamaica. And the idea is to empower them, to empower the local government officials, the mayors, and for us, the national agencies. We work together with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. We work with the Philippine Coast Guard. We work with the local government officials, because in the Philippines, all municipalities and provinces have sanctuaries, marine sanctuaries, or what we call marine protected areas, MPAs, which are really checked 24 hours by the mayors and by their environmentalists from their municipalities to check for illegal fishing and that the corals are doing well. We do, as a diver myself, we do coral aggregation because of the Typhoon Rai, as I mentioned. Most of the corals were really destroyed. And the governor herself and the mayors joined us in diving and coral aggregation and all this stuff. But again, I agree, we must go to the ground and empower them and educate them. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Undersecretary. Remarks, yes?
One thing I've observed is in the depths of the pandemic, a lot of us, probably ourselves, said, when we come back, we're going to build back better. We're going to build back differently. And my concern right now, and I've fallen into this myself, so I'm not pointing a finger at anyone, is that the most common commentary I hear now is we'll be back to 2019 levels of arrivals by X date. And I think I would just love to encourage everyone in the room to be thinking about quality over quantity. How do we potentially have fewer arrivals in the future, but better ones that will leave a positive impact? So that's for policymakers to determine, not us. But I am concerned that we'll find ourselves in 2024 or 2025 going, we're right back to where we were. in the negative sense, not in the positive sense. So anyway, to all my colleagues out there, I hope that we can all together really focus on the quality of the tourist versus the quantity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wise words there. Are there any other comments? Everyone good? Yes.
Just, I think I will express our common feelings. I would like to thank the organizers of this event because we had a very good opportunity to share with the new ideas and to make more clear our visions. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. With that, I'm going to turn to Mr. Ian Vilku to summarize our session today and offer his remarks.
Thank you very much. Well, as expected, from such a quality, high level, and high expertise panel of discussion, we had the privilege of having a discussion on tackling the climate change, which offered us multiple perspectives on such a strategic topic. So we had both the perspective of the policymakers, of the government, with many valuable specific reference to the policies both under elaboration and others already under implementation, as well as the much necessary perspective of the private sectors through the voice of top executives of entities which are key players in international tourism, able to bring inside the discussion valuable input, evaluation and proposal through the network of their members like WTC, PATA and ATTA. Therefore, I think that I am interpreting the feelings of all of you, of all the attendees, by saying that this panel of discussion fully achieved the objective of sharing relevant and enriching reflection approaches and specific examples, such as, for example, regional and national specific challenges and experiences. Also, politics, concrete politics like reducing food waste, on zero plastic goals, and so on. Structural changes produced in the sector and in consumers' behavior by the shock of the pandemic. Priority aspect to be considered at the design of the policies and actions to address the climate change, like the importance of the human capital development and education, as was underlined. Also, proposal of creation of improved institutional framework on global sustainability. And also the support that the private businesses expect from the government. Creation of institutional support for public-private partnership and the importance of the private PPP to be implemented at the local level, and many others. So many of the reflections that our outstanding panelists have just shared with us constitute our essential contribution for a common approach to face the challenge with the sector deal with. Therefore, allow me to very briefly mention some aspects that constitute this common denominator of the intervention. First of all, I would like to underline that this is a wide agreement on the key role of the public-private partnership as a much-needed platform for multi-stakeholder dialogue and collaboration, as the solid basis we need for the global, regional, and national effort to understand and anticipate the risk in global tourism, to adapt the sector to the new challenges, and to find feasible solutions to accelerate the adoption of new models for the tourism industry. I was very encouraging to hear today from many of our distinguished panelists, as well as during the keynote speech, about the priority, about the top priority role assigned to the solid partnership, to the private sector, to the destinations, in finding feasible solutions to address this challenge. And aware of this reality, aware of this consensus, World Tourism Organization will continue to offer such a necessary platform for the multi-stakeholder dialogue in collaboration with our members and partners. And of course, to plenty assume our important institutional role to lead the process as underlined here by the State Minister of Japan. And the second aspect, I think it's part of this common denominator of the discussion, of the debate, is that it's crucial to build on solid basis. And that means not only on the already mentioned basis of the partnership, but also by embedding the main learned lesson from the recent crisis, challenges and risks in the new models and strategies. And a specific lesson is that the sector and the customers have already changed, have probably changed permanently, and that the pandemic induced relevant change of behavior of the consumer that must be carefully considered. Travelers have become more discerning and cautious about the impact of their traveling choices on climate and environment. There is a growing number of new travelers' profiles focused on social responsibility and the positive impact of travel, with a changing perspective for decarbonized travel experiences. Therefore, governments and tourist businesses must reassess how we respond to the changing expectation of the customers. I consider also timely to underline that the discussion reinforces the broad perception and that the crisis is a big opportunity for tourism to achieve an even higher priority position in the political agenda of the government, and this could happen at regional and global level also. Paradoxically, the devastating effect of the pandemic generated a political opportunity. Tourism relevance became clear through its absence due to the pandemic. This window of opportunity is now open, and we have to take advantage of it. The need for tourist development has never been greater and assumed by the governments. Therefore, an excellent news this enriching debate leaves us is the reinforcement of the perception that there is a wide coincidence on many key aspects on how to address this challenge in a coordinated manner. With this in mind, and without going in further details, I would like to end underlining that in WTO we stand ready to continue being consistently engaged and in supporting this coordinated effort to bring everyone from the government and businesses to local communities together around a shared vision for a more sustainable, inclusive and resilient sector with a special emphasis in tackling the climate change. Today's discussion, in my opinion, met the most demanding possible expectation, so allow me to sincerely thank and congratulate all the distinguished members of the panel, our moderator, and also to once again thank to the organizers of this Japan Tourist Expo and of this roundtable for their commitment and for this excellent framework we had for this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vilku, and for your leadership and the leadership of UNWTO. It's very important at this time, as we've clearly seen. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the close of the fifth Tourism Expo Japan Ministerial Roundtable. Please join me in giving a round of applause to our panelists. We appreciate all of you joining us. We know you came from a very long way. issue of climate change, whether it's locally, whether it's in your organization, whether it's at the government level, however you may be able to do it. We hope that you'll enjoy Tourism Expo Japan over the next few days. Come to the floor, visit the booths. There's many countries represented as well as Japan. Everyone is very eager to meet you and bring tourism back, both outbound and inbound for Japan. So with that, I'd like to say thank you again to our group and wish you a good day. Thank you. And the panelists, please remain on stage, and we'll be taking a group photo. So we'll be setting up.